Hey guys, tonight we begin with a candle flickering in the corner of a room you haven't cleaned in a week, and that's okay. You're lying there, half wrapped in a blanket that keeps slipping off your foot, and outside your window, the world is still spinning, unaware that you're about to become quietly dangerous. This isn't some power fantasy where you learn to dominate every room you enter, Basser. No, this is subtler, sleepier, like learning to win a chess game by moving only three pieces slowly, precisely, without ever lifting your voice. And let's be real, you probably won't survive this new level of self-control without a few psychological bruises. Because learning how to manipulate and control people without ever saying a word, it requires a calm. You didn't know you had a patience. Your enemies won't know how to fight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to reach for your phone, post your city, and the current time, I want to see where our little cult of calmness is listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts not with strategy, not with technique, but with silence. You're sitting across from someone who used to make your blood boil. You know the type: smooth talk, always a backhanded compliment, loaded like a catapult. But tonight, you're different. You don't jump, you don't fill the space. You let their words land and go nowhere. Because here's the secret Stoic power move: silence. Not the awkward kind, not the angry kind, just the kind that stays. Long enough to make the other person fidget, wonder, doubt. Historians still argue whether Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, remained silent in debates as a form of mental discipline or passive resistance. Either way, it worked. People talked themselves into exhaustion trying to provoke him. You're channeling that now. You don't nod, you disagree. You simply blink. It's like placing a mirror in front of their manipulation. They see themselves reflected, and it's uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's your leverage. Not because you said something clever, but because you said nothing at all. Silence makes people reveal their intentions. They rush to fill it with their true desires. When you stay still, you become the confessional booth for everyone else's chaos. And that's not weakness. That's field research. You begin to notice how they lean forward when you lean back. How they ask, "What are you thinking?" when you smile instead of responding. It's subtle, but the dynamic flips. You're no longer reacting to them. They're reacting to your stillness. And yes, it takes practice. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit." That line stings, doesn't it? Because it means you've been co-writing your agitation. Every time you rose to bait, every time you rushed to explain, that was you agreeing to the game. But tonight, you burn that rulebook. You let your silence speak not as a punishment, but as a presence. Imagine you're standing in a crowded room, everyone's performing. Loud outfits, loud opinions, louder insecurities. And there you are in the corner, calm as a forest. Someone bumps into you expecting an apology, a reaction, a flare. You adjust your stance and say, "Nothing." The absence of drama becomes your signature scent, quirky Stoic tidbit. Some early practitioners reportedly trained for this by pretending to be deaf in marketplaces just to see how people would treat them without the expectation of response. Weird, maybe. Effective, absolutely. Because when you remove your need to respond, you start observing everything. Power isn't in the reply, it's in the withholding. There's a moment tonight, maybe it already happened, where someone tried to throw their chaos at you. An accusation, a weird social jab, and instead of catching it, you let it fall, like a toddler's toy tossed across a kitchen floor. You walk past it not because you didn't see it, but because you know better now. This is the first real test of manipulation without confrontation. You're learning that being quiet is a choice, not a surrender. That stillness isn't passive, it's strategic. You're not losing the game. You've simply stopped playing on their board. Let's not romanticize it too much, though. It can feel lonely. You'll crave the satisfaction of a sharp comeback, a poetic jab, but the true flex, knowing you could destroy someone's ego and choosing not to. You don't need applause for that. Just a glass of water. Maybe a stretch. Maybe a grin in the mirror when no one's watching. Because this version of you, the one who pauses, who listens more than speaks, who turns down the temperature in every room that's not weakness, that's mastery. So tomorrow when someone tries to poke your emotional armor, remember you've already chosen your weapon. And it doesn't make a sound. Now you walk into a room not with a bang, but with a weight. Not a heavy weight, but something steady. People feel it before they see you. It's not the clothes, it's not the posture. It's the absence of need. You're not there to impress. You're not looking to win them over. And ironically, that makes them lean closer. That's manipulation rule number 2. When you stop needing approval, you become magnetic. You spot them someone who used to make you shrink. They talk louder when they see you, like volume can make up for your stillness. You smile, but not too wide, just enough to be unreadable. That's the power of ambiguity. When people don't know exactly what you think of them, they work harder for your attention. It's not cruel, it's psychology. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Tonight, that means you don't match their energy. You don't correct their story. You don't defend yourself. You just let it land. You watch how quickly they tire themselves out explaining who they think you are. That's the Stoic edge. You've stopped offering emotional fuel. You walk past the snack table, nothing dramatic. But in your head, you're not planning comebacks. You're watching, learning. Who speaks just to be heard? Who listens only to respond? Who starts cracking when no one validates them? Those are your variables now. And you're the constant, unmoved, unedited. Quirky Stoic tidbit. Cleanthes, a student of Zeno, was said to have spent years working as a water carrier while studying philosophy. He said it trained his endurance, not just physically, but mentally. People mocked him for carrying buckets, but he knew what they didn't silence while working is the ultimate disguise. No one suspects the quiet one is watching. So you sip your drink slowly. You speak only when it matters. And suddenly, everyone wants to know what's behind your calm. They mistake it for mystery, but really it's just peace. Historians still argue whether Stoic detachment was emotional numbing or radical self-awareness. Were they suppressing pain or mastering it, but you're finding out firsthand. The less you give away, the more you notice, and that changes the whole game. There's a moment tonight when someone tries to corner you with a passive-aggressive jab. Something veiled as a joke, but sharp beneath the surface. Old you would have laughed it off or over-explained. New you. You pause. Then say, "Interesting," and let it float there like a balloon with no string. They stare, waiting for the punchline, but you've already moved on. See, manipulation isn't always deceit. Sometimes it's precision. And silence used well is surgical. Later you excuse yourself with quiet grace. Not rushed, not flustered. You walk slowly like someone who's already made peace with every exit. You don't look back, you don't need to. You get home and here's the kicker. You don't replay the night obsessively. You don't script imaginary conversations. You just breathe because your energy wasn't scattered across the room. It stayed with you. You journal something short, a phrase, a realization, maybe even a quote you barely remember from Seneca, who once said, "As is a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is." You think about how good your restraint felt. Not performative, just correct. Like choosing a wool cloak on a cold day, quiet, comfortable, wise. You notice this change in tiny ways. You leave texts on read when they're designed to provoke. You nod and say, "maybe," instead of "sure" when someone's fishing for agreement. You've begun to enjoy the discomfort you create when you no longer rush to fill silence with apologies or validation. There's power in becoming unpredictable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a calm refusal to conform. People who once had a script for you now fumble with their lines. They don't know where to place you. And instead of trying to define yourself, you just exist. Tomorrow, someone might say you've changed. And you'll smile softly, because what they mean is, I can't control you anymore, and that's the point. You're not manipulating people to harm. You're learning how to make them see you differently by showing less, holding more, becoming someone who makes noise just by being still. Because you've realized the oldest truth in strategy: when people can't read you, they can't use you. And that's when you've won. The next day begins like any other, almost boringly so. But that's the trick, isn't it? Manipulation doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with a perfectly poured cup of tea and a choice not to chase. You're in no rush to impress today. You dress with intention, but not for reaction. Saffron-toned sleeves, maybe? A steady look in the mirror. And that moment of dressing for the role only you know you're playing sets the tone. Because subtle power starts in private. The way you tie your laces, the way you align your posture before stepping out. It's not about them, it's about staying calibrated. That's control. And people, they notice that alignment before you speak. You head out. Not a grand entrance, just a deliberate one. There's someone at work who thrives on throwing people off. Always a joke at someone's expense. Always a power play disguised as charm. Today you're their target. You see it coming. They drop a casual insult with a grin. The group waits for your reaction. You tilt your head just slightly and respond with, "Oh," then silence. No defense. No retort. Just presence. You've thrown the weight of interpretation back on them. That pause you leave, it forces them to explain their joke. And no one likes explaining a joke, especially not bullies. That's manipulation rule 3. Let their mask crack itself. Stoics had a word for this kind of subtle strength: prohairesis. It's your moral will, your internal authority. The world can toss you around like a ship in a storm, but if you've anchored your prohairesis, nothing moves you unless you allow it. You watch the shift. The group chuckles nervously, not sure who the joke's on now. That power? It's not because you outwitted them, it's because you didn't play. A quirky Stoic story drifts in. Chrysippus, one of the great Stoic minds, reportedly laughed himself to death after watching a donkey eat figs and drink wine. Historians still argue whether the tale is true or exaggerated, but the metaphor is oddly fitting. Sometimes the absurdities of others aren't worth fighting, they're worth chuckling at, then moving on. You take this energy into your next interaction, an email reply. Someone's fishing for control, cloaking demands in polite language. You see through it. And instead of matching their tone, you cut through it with a simple phrase: "Let me get back to you on that." Neutral, unrattled, and oddly disarming. People who try to manipulate hate uncertainty. And when you become a mirror reflecting their tone without absorbing it, you stop being a pawn. You start becoming the board. Here's the irony: the less reactive you are, the more in control you become. Not because you dominate, but because you destabilize their expectations. You're not hostile, you're unreadable. Later in the day, someone comments on your vibe. They can't name it exactly, but they feel it: this strange confidence without volume, this certainty without arrogance. It unnerves them in a way that feels like attraction and fear holding hands. That's the sweet spot. Manipulation, when done well, isn't even perceived as manipulation. It's just the art of being so centered that people bend toward your stillness. You pause by a window, your reflection blurred by the sun. You look less like someone trying to conquer, and more like someone who's already claimed the territory within. That's the battlefield Stoicism favors: internal over external, influence over force. You remember Epictetus again. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That line doesn't hit like thunder. It lands like stone. Heavy. True. Anchoring. You walk home slowly. Not because you're tired, but because you're savoring the sensation of moving through the world without urgency, without needing to prove or correct. The people who used to shake you now barely register on your radar, and that's not because they've changed. It's because you stopped dancing to their rhythm. Manipulation tip 4. Set your rhythm. Let others trip over trying to match it. You pass someone on the street who used to stir your anxiety. They glance up expecting the old tension. You nod once, calm, kind, closed. They're left carrying the awkwardness you used to hold. That's how you control a narrative, by refusing to pick it up. You get home, toss your keys, exhale. There's no lingering tension, no echoes of battles you didn't choose to fight. Just peace. Earned, not borrowed. You journal again. Not grand declarations, just a line: I didn't flinch today. That's it. That's the win. And before bed, you laugh at something small, a dumb meme, a weird noise your fridge makes. You let joy in. Because manipulation isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming selective. You still feel deeply. You just choose who gets to witness it. Tonight, sleep finds you quicker. You didn't waste energy performing. You didn't rehearse comebacks. You didn't try to fix anyone's opinion. You let your silence do the sculpting. And what's being carved? Not a villain, not a saint, just someone who no longer asks to be understood. And that's control. The next morning, you're already ahead before your feet hit the floor. Why? Because you've stopped asking permission to own the day. You're not waking up to fix, you're waking up to flow. You stretch slow and deliberate and roll your neck as if shrugging off someone else's expectations. No urgency, no performance, just presence. And presence is persuasive. Remember manipulation tip 5, don't rush. People equate calm with competence, silence with certainty. If you stroll into a room and say nothing, the right people lean in. The wrong ones fidget. As you brew your tea or coffee, we're not here to judge you, replay a memory. That conversation where someone tried to guilt you into doing something. They layered their request with phrases like, "You're the only one I can count on," or "I'd be lost without your help." It used to work. Now you sip your tea, unmoved. See, manipulation can go both ways. There's theirs and there's yours. The difference: yours is rooted in awareness, not desperation. The Stoics would call this kind of discernment sophrosyne, self-control paired with wisdom, a harmony of reason and restraint. Historians still argue whether it's teachable or just lived into, but in your case, you're learning to spot emotional bait from a mile away. At work, someone corners you with faux urgency. "I need this today. It's critical." You smile lightly and respond, "Let's define critical." Not sarcastic, not passive-aggressive, just curious with teeth. That one phrase, it shifts the power. You're not rejecting their needs. You're inviting them to clarify their panic. And most panic doesn't survive under inspection. The rest of the day hums with these small reversals. You don't dominate meetings, but you do control the tempo. You slow the pace. You ask pointed questions. You nod when others speak, but rarely interrupt. You've realized the less you speak, the more people attribute wisdom to you. That's manipulation. Tip 6, let people fill in the blanks with admiration. Funny thing, there's a quirky detail about Marcus Aurelius. The Stoic emperor reportedly hated excessive praise even from his closest advisors. He kept a slave near his throne during triumphs whose job was to whisper, "You are only a man." Stoic humility or just an early PR manager, historians debate. But you admire the move. You walk into a shared space, a cafe maybe, and someone who used to ignore you now looks twice. They're not sure why. You're not louder. You're not flashier. You're just not asking for anything. That's disarming. People are trained to spot need. They sense hunger, whether emotional or social. But you radiate fullness, not arrogance, containment. Manipulation tip 7. People trust what they can't shake. Later, someone tries to provoke you again, subtly, of course. They mention your past mistake in a way that feels like a joke. You laugh, not fake, not defensive, just amused. Yeah, you say what a ride that was. Then, silence. They expected deflection or explanation. You gave them self-possession. And that is deeply unsettling to anyone hoping to chip away at you. You walk out of the conversation clean. Because when you stop defending your past, it stops owning you. On your lunch break, you watch two people argue. One's flailing, talking fast, voice rising. The other just tilts their head and waits. That quiet presence is magnetic. It reminds you energy wins over volume. And you're learning to channel yours like a sculptor's chisel, precise, economical, unapologetic. In the evening, you answer a message you'd normally avoid. Someone who always had the upper hand. You type slowly. Not to be dramatic, to stay intentional. Hope you're well. I'm keeping things simple these days. Let's connect another time. Translation. I'm not rejecting you. I'm deprioritizing you. That's manipulation tip 8. Scarcity creates demand. When you become less available, your presence becomes more valuable. The Stoics believe that everything temporary should be held loosely, even praise, even power, especially people. Seneca once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." That line hits differently now. You don't need to be in every conversation. You don't need to win every room. Just the ones that matter. At home, you light a candle again. Not because it's dramatic, because it's yours. The ritual, the softness, the calm, these are weapons too. Not flashy ones. Steady ones. You journal. Just a few lines. Didn't chase, didn't explain, didn't shrink, the trifecta. And as you settle in for the night, you think of how many times people mistook your silence for weakness. Let them. Manipulation tip 9. Let them underestimate you. It gives you room to maneuver. They expect the loud return, the clapback, the performance. What they get is evolution in slow motion, and that terrifies them. You wake up the next day to a message, a vague one, something like, "Hey, just thinking of you, hope you're okay." It's not curiosity, it's reconnaissance, a social probe disguised as kindness. They want to know if you've broken yet. You don't respond. Not out of spite, out of sovereignty. Because manipulation tip 10 is this: not everything requires a reply. And sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing. You roll over and stretch. The air feels clearer. Your bed's still warm. Your mind's still yours. No one else's narrative to carry. No fire to put out that isn't your own. As you sip your tea and scroll through the morning's quiet, a name pops up. Not theirs, but someone else from the same chapter, someone who used to hold power over your emotions with just a glance. Funny how it doesn't land anymore, like trying to stab fog. That's because you've been rewiring your inner court. Remember that Stoic courtroom metaphor? The one where you used to let your thoughts hold trials, dragging every insecurity into the dock for examination. Yeah, that room is under renovation. Only the wise and helpful thoughts get in now. No admission for drama. The Stoics had a word for this: prohairesis, the faculty of choice. Your ability to decide what you focus on. Epictetus claimed it was the one thing no one could take from you. Historians still argue whether he believed in true free will or just practical detachment. Either way, you're living it. Later in a meeting or casual lunch, wherever you are, you spot at someone trying to steer the room's attention. Not with brilliance, but with bluster. You watch. You don't interrupt. You let their energy burn out. Because here's manipulation tip 11: silence reveals what noise conceals. You wait until the perfect moment, then offer a thought, measured, relevant, softly delivered. Everyone hears it. Not because you shout, but because you don't waste words. That's the difference. They chase impact. You craft it. At the store, a stranger cuts in line. No apology, just entitlement. You don't bristle. You don't glare. You smile politely and take a small step back. They glance at you confused. Your calm is unnerving. It says, I see you, but I don't need to engage you. Manipulation tip 12. Composure is a currency, and when you stop spending it on small offenses, you grow rich in influence. Back home, you receive another message, a quick favor, someone you haven't heard from in months. Their tone is breezy, casual. They don't ask how you are. They ask what you can do for them. You pause, and you reply, that's not something I can commit to right now. Wishing you all the best. Soft, final, boundaried. That one sentence says everything without saying too much. You've learned to stop explaining, because explanations invite negotiation, and you're done negotiating with people who only show up with an invoice. It's not about being unkind, it's about being clear, and clarity is terrifying to people who thrive in the fog. The Stoics often practice something called the premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They'd visualize worst-case scenarios not to scare themselves, but to become unshakable if those things happened. So when someone does try to guilt you, shame you, twist your past against you, you've already rehearsed the scene in your mind, and in every version you walk out calm. You're not bracing for impact, you're bracing for peace. Midday now, you open your calendar and cancel an old commitment, one that no longer aligns. You feel the flicker of discomfort. The what if they're disappointed thought. Then it passes. Because you remember you're not manipulating people with charm or lies. You're manipulating environments with boundaries. Manipulation tip 13. Boundaries are the quietest form of control, the kind that doesn't shout power. It radiates it. You fold laundry, you hum a little. Your life isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. That's scarier than drama. People expect your transformation to look like a phoenix rising, but it looks more like you stacking folded shirts by color. Calmly. That's power. That's control. There's a quirky tidbit from Stoic history. Cleanthes, one of the early Stoics, was also a boxer and a water carrier. He wrote philosophy by day and hauled water at night. Some said he did it to stay humble. Others thought he just liked the silence. Historians still debate his motive, but you get it now. Sometimes, control means staying anonymous in your own strength. You glance at your reflection again. Just a glimpse, but it's enough. You don't see someone trying to win. You see someone performing, someone who has no interest in earning approval from people who can't even manage their own emotions. That is your new edge. You've stopped manipulating with theatrics. You manipulate now with stillness. Still water doesn't just run deep, it reflects. And everyone who looks into it sees something different. Sometimes what they see scares them. Afternoon sunlight spills through the slats in your blinds, striping the room in soft golden shadow. You sit back, not in a throne, but something better. A chair that creaks honestly, supporting your back, like it's known you a long time. That's the vibe now. Nothing fancy, everything intentional. You check your notifications and feel nothing. Not in a numb way, in a mastered way. That tiny dopamine jolt that used to hit with each like or reply. Gone. Not missed, because you've rewired what validation feels like. You validate yourself now with silence, with effort, with absence of panic. Manipulation tip 14. Control begins when you no longer need their applause to hear your own rhythm. That rhythm hums softly today as you water a plant. Just one. Something leafy and slow-growing like you. You pour, adjust the soil slightly, and smile. Growth takes root quietly. The Stoics spoke of eudaimonia, a flourishing of the soul aligned with virtue. Historians still argue whether this was meant as individual transcendence or communal harmony. But either way, it wasn't loud. It wasn't decorative. It was steady, grounded, just like you. Later, you walk past a cafe, maybe the same one where you once twisted yourself into knots, trying to keep someone engaged in conversation. You'd smile too hard, nod too much, contort your opinions to match theirs like a human mirror. You'd leave that place drained and a little smaller. Today you pass by and don't even look through the window, and because you've learned the 15th rule, you don't manipulate people by becoming who they want. You gain control by staying who you are uncompromised. Someone calls your name behind you. A voice from the past, a former friend, an ex-colleague doesn't matter. They approach like nothing happened, like you owe them continuity. You offer a warm, measured smile. They speak. They fumble a bit, fishing for familiarity, hoping you'll pick up the script where they left off. You don't. You don't confront. You don't rewind. You just speak from the present. They look confused. Your calm throws them off. Your lack of nostalgia feels like rejection. But it's not rejection. It's just evolution. They ask if you're free for coffee sometime. You tilt your head and say something like, "I'm focusing inward right now." That's manipulation tip 16. Withhold the performance. Let them sit with their own silence. Back home, you open a drawer, old letters, old notes, that shoebox of memories. You don't cry, you don't rage. You just read a few, smile at the version of you that lived there, then close the box. No ritual burning, no social media declaration of closure, just a closed drawer. Remember when you thought closure had to be mutual, that healing needed permission? Yeah, that version of you is retired now. The Stoics had a practice known as sympathia, a sense of connectedness to all things, even your enemies. Not to romanticize them, but to contextualize them. To see that they are also governed by pain, confusion, ego. You look back now and see that most of the people who tried to control you weren't evil. They were scared. And scared people try to control what they don't understand. But here's manipulation tip 17. When you stop reacting, they start reflecting. The next day, someone sends a message. Subtle jab wrapped in faux concern. You've changed, they write. You used to be more fun. You stare at it, then delete it. That you don't engage, you don't clarify, because you know what they really mean is used to be easier to manipulate. Not anymore. It's funny how silence, once a punishment, has become your power. Quirky Stoic detail of the day. Seneca wrote letters to a man named Lucilius offering advice, reflections, musings. They weren't meant for publication, just one man whispering wisdom to another. Historians still wonder if they were edited for legacy or genuinely raw. Either way, they're still being read centuries later. Maybe that's what your power looks like now, words not written to impress, but to endure. Evenings are different now. You sit with a cup of something warm. Maybe it's tea, maybe it's just water with a slice of lemon. The point is, you're not chasing comfort. You're choosing it. You draft an email you don't send. You write a message you'll never post. Not because you're afraid, because you've learned that not every thought deserves an audience. Manipulation tip 18. Master the art of unshared power. Not everything you feel must be performed. Not every realization needs a witness. The world expects reactivity. You offer restraint. The world expects drama. You offer dignity. And slowly, without any public display, your influence grows. People notice your boundaries. They notice your calm. They wonder what you know that they don't. And that's when you've won. Not by breaking them, by not letting them break you. Even before sunrise, you feel it, that eerie calm that cloaks early mornings like a whispered truce. No alarms, no buzz, just your breath, a soft blanket, and the barely there creak of the world waking up. You blink slowly, not from exhaustion, but from presence. You're here now, fully. Hey guys, tonight we navigate the slippery, spicy slope of persuasion, perception, and power. The quiet mechanics of how people are shaped, nudged, and sometimes utterly steered without a single visible string. You probably won't survive this with your old ideas intact, but that's part of the fun, right? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sip something warm as the sky begins to blush, faint blue. Your reflection in the mug is soft, yes, but certain. Because by now you've memorized manipulation tip 19, the true art of control is making others think they're leading. You just hand them the map you drew. Today you play it cool, very cool. At work in the group chat, wherever power shifts like wind through tall grass, you sit anchored. Stoic but not stiff, calm but not checked out. That's the paradox, you're fully alert, just not rattled. Someone cracks a passive-aggressive joke, the kind that used to hook you like barbed wire. You smile gently, nod once, and let it float into the void unbothered. The room notices. They always notice when bait is left hanging. You jot a few notes in your planner, but not about them. About your next project, your next growth step. Because manipulation tip 20, control your direction, and people will follow the current without knowing who built the riverbanks. Marcus Aurelius once observed the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Historians still debate whether this meant moral alignment or mental focus, but either way, you're choosing your palette now. Bold hues, honest shades. You walk past two co-workers whispering. They glance at you not with malice, but curiosity. There's an edge of reverence in how they hush when you pass. Not because you're intimidating, because you've stopped broadcasting. You've stopped being decipherable. Invisibility used wisely becomes a cloak of power. You remember a time you would have joined that circle, added your thoughts, performed your identity. But now, you keep your presence whole, undivided. There's power in not dispersing your energy for scraps of validation, manipulation, and tip 21. People chase what they don't understand. Let your stillness be a riddle. Later that day, a message pops up. Someone wants your opinion. They frame it as a question, but you can sense the bait beneath it, an attempt to draw you into a conflict that's not yours. You type a response, then erase it. You write, "Sounds like something worth thinking through. Let me know what you decide." That's it. No alignment, no fuel, just redirection. You've stopped giving people your heat to warm their chaos. A quirky Stoic tidbit bubbles up. Epictetus once trained his students not just in logic, but in conversational endurance. He made them role-play arguments without defending themselves, just listening, nodding calmly, returning to center. The idea, master your inner court before stepping into public trials. Historians still argue whether these drills were effective character builders or just philosophical hazing. Either way, you're doing your own version now. At lunch, you choose the seat with the most light. Not to be seen, but to see. You observe. Who dominates? Who listens? Who performs peace and who is peace? You sip your drink and realize manipulation tip 22 is about strategic silence. Sometimes silence isn't a void, it's a container. One that others can't stop trying to fill. By mid-afternoon, someone asks if you're okay. You blink, surprised. Of course. Why? They fumble. You've just changed. Quieter. You shrug, then nod. Just thinking more than talking lately. It's not a lie, but it's also a statement of dominance. You're telling them I'm choosing how I show up. You're not owed noise from me. That night, you stretch out on your bed, not with fatigue, but with clarity. You replay a few conversations, check in with your body. Tension, low. Regret, absent. Satisfaction. Quiet and warm, like a lamp left on just for you. Manipulation tip 23. Leave people with questions, not answers. A sense of unfinished business. A feeling they missed a beat. Not for cruelty, but for gravity. Because gravity doesn't shout, it pulls. By now, the pattern is clear. Your stillness is not passive. It's sculpted, sharpened. You wake up with fewer what-ifs and more what now. Because manipulation, as you've learned, isn't always about twisting arms. Sometimes it's about folding yours quietly and letting others spin their own webs trying to catch your attention. Today starts like a whisper. You skip the scroll. No doom clicking, no diving into someone else's chaos before you've grounded your own. You make your tea slower than usual. Feel the weight of the mug, the small warmth in your palms. You catch your reflection in the glass stove just for a second, but enough to notice something new, the absence of tension. Stoicism has a word for this euthymia, a sense of contented self-direction. Seneca described it as believing in yourself and trusting that you are on the right path. Historians still argue whether this was about personal ethics or emotional regulation, but for you, it's a quiet North Star. Manipulation tip 24. Confidence is silent when it's real. The loudest people often haven't convinced themselves yet. Later you move through the grocery store like you're gliding. Someone bumps you. No apology, just a flustered shuffle away. You used to stew in moments like that. Today, you nod slightly like a monk granting safe passage. No one has time for petty kingdom wars when they're building empires of peace. That's tip 25, don't take the bait, don't play the game. Change the board. You overhear someone arguing 2 aisles over. The pitch, the volume, the fury, it's almost cinematic. A younger version of you might have eavesdropped, might have judged, might have tweeted it. Now you just feel a flicker of pity, because you know the cost of being addicted to being right. Your phone buzzes, a name you used to dread. You let it buzz. Another tip 26, if you're counting response, is not a requirement. Silence is a complete sentence. You head to checkout. The clerk fumbles the change, clearly frazzled. You offer a calm smile. It's fine, take your time. That pause in your voice, that lack of urgency, it disarms people more than anger ever could. People expect irritation. Grace throws them off balance. That's manipulation. Tip 27, break their pattern. They won't know where to step next. As you walk home, your mind drifts to the last time you lost control. Not the time you thought you were composed, the real loss. The yelling, the shaking, the spinning afterward. You remember how it felt to hand someone else the steering wheel of your emotions. Never again. The Stoics taught this not through slogans but scenarios. Practice losing. Practice discomfort. Practice letting go. Why? So when the moment comes, you don't fall apart. You fall into form. A quirky little detail from the ancient world, some Stoic philosophers wore intentionally ragged clothes in public, not to make a statement, but to remind themselves that dignity isn't stitched into fabric. Historians still debate whether it was humility or just branding. But either way, the point stands, appearances are theater. Presence is power. You reach your building. Someone holds the door for you. You thank them with full eye contact, steady grounded. That's manipulation tip 28. Appreciation delivered with presence feels more valuable than praise sprayed like cologne. Later in your room, you write out 5 things you didn't react to today. Not big wins, not hero moves. Just small moments where your old self might have sparked. Instead, you breathed. Let it pass. It's a quiet inventory, but it's golden. That's manipulation. Tip 29, manage your reactions and you become unmanageable. Your enemy, if they're still watching, feels it too. Not your wrath, your restraint, not your heat, your hollowness where they once lived rent-free. You evicted them not with fire, but with indifference. And they'll try everything to get back in a provocation, apology, praise in disguise, but you've changed the locks. Tip 30, and never announce your evolution. Let the confusion haunt them. As you stretch before bed, you hear your own breath more clearly than ever. It's not ragged, it's not shallow, it's a metronome of calm. Tomorrow you'll rinse and repeat. Not because you have to, because you want to. Because power that comes from peace doesn't burn, it warms. Quietly, constantly. You're not bulletproof, you still bruise, but you don't flinch. And that's what they notice. You're not here to manipulate for dominance. You're here to master yourself so deeply, others stop trying to master you. There's a myth they like to sell you that control means towering over others, puppet strings in hand, a chessboard full of pawns. But here's what you know now: true control starts when you stop needing to be seen holding it. This morning, you don't leap out of bed like a motivational poster. You sit up slowly, you exhale, you stretch with that satisfying ache of a spine finally waking up. And then you do nothing for a full minute. No rush, no reach for the phone, no panic about lost time, just being. That alone would have terrified your past self. But now it's liberation. Manipulation tip 31: nothing disturbs your enemy more than your refusal to rush. You pad barefoot across the floor. Make your tea with 2 hands. You don't multitask anymore. You monotask, like a monk. One motion, one moment. Even boiling water becomes a meditation. There's a Stoic idea called prosoche, directing your full attention to the present moment. Marcus Aurelius practiced this while commanding armies. You practice it while slicing apples. Maybe the battlefield's different, but the stakes still real. Historians still argue whether the Stoics meant to cultivate mindfulness or if it was a byproduct of their constant journaling and reflection. Either way, what they stumbled into was emotional power-anchored awareness, and it shows up in your life in places people least expect. Today, you walk into a room you used to dread: a workplace, a social setting, maybe even a family table. Same space, different posture, no more bracing. You move with steady breath and calm eyes. Someone tests you: a passive jab, a backhanded compliment. You smile. Not sarcastic, not smug, just unfazed. Manipulation tip 32: respond in a way that makes them question their aim. They expect the flinch. You blink slowly. They expect a comeback. You sip water. They expect drama. You offer kindness and let the silence do the heavy lifting. You've become uncooperative to chaos. A quirky bit of history for your tea break: Epictetus once warned his students to beware of flattery more than insults. Why? Because flattery bypasses your defenses. Insults sharpen them. Historians still debate whether he was paranoid or prophetic. But either way, the advice stands: beware the compliment with a hook in it. Back in the room, the conversation shifts. People turn to you not for volume, but for clarity. When you speak, it's deliberate. You've stopped narrating your every move. You've stopped announcing your growth. You let your presence speak. That's tip 33: wield words like a scalpel, not a sword. Someone asks for your opinion. You pause. You think. You answer without needing to impress. That pause alone holds power. Because you're not reacting, you're selecting. Later, you catch someone staring. Not in a creepy way, just curious. Like they're trying to figure out what changed. They used to know exactly how to rile you. Now you've become a locked door with no handle. They can knock all day. You don't have to answer. Tip 34. Mystery manipulates the imagination more than explanation ever could. You spend the afternoon doing something humble: organizing drawers, sharpening pencils, watering plants. Mundane, yes, but rooted. Grounding isn't glamorous, but it's dangerous to people who thrive on throwing you off center. The Stoics understood this deeply. Their advice wasn't just for emperors. It was for artisans, slaves, merchants, anyone living a life that risked unraveling under pressure. Cleanthes, remember, hauled water at night and wrote philosophy by day. Not because he had to, but because anchoring yourself in routine is how you control the storm within. You take a walk at dusk. The sky's somewhere between honey and ash. You think about the version of you who once needed to chase people for closure. The one who rehearsed comebacks in the shower. The one who screamed into pillows because they couldn't scream into the void. That version of you, you thank them. They fought hard to survive, but you're not surviving anymore. You're selecting your battles with precision. Most don't even make the list. Tip 35. No one can defeat the version of you that no longer plays. As you cross the street, someone waves. An old friend. You wave back with warmth, but you don't rush to reconnect. You don't fill in the awkward silence with people-pleasing. You let it be. You've grown past the need to fix what broke naturally. You're not withholding. You're honoring space. You get home. Journal open. You write one line. Today I mastered myself. Then you smile because you know tomorrow you'll need to start over. That's the secret they don't tell you. Self-mastery isn't a trophy. It's a rhythm, a daily return, a recalibration, and manipulation. When done with this kind of grace isn't about puppets, it's about poetry. It's about making your stillness so potent it rearranges the room. Tomorrow they'll try again. New bait, new games, new digs dressed as jokes. But you've outgrown the stage. Let them perform. You've become the audience now. And your silence, standing ovation. So tonight you don't armor up, you light a candle. Not to make a statement, but to make peace. The room smells faintly of beeswax and quiet intentions. You sit cross-legged again, journal nearby, nothing urgent, nothing loud. This isn't performance, it's practice. Manipulation tip 36. Quiet rituals create loud impact. Because here's the paradox, the more private your discipline, the more public your power feels. People don't see your inner work, but they feel its glow. And that's the final trick, not to manipulate with chaos, but with consistency. There's no final boss to defeat here, no grand confrontation, just you and your ability to remain composed when it would be easier to erupt. You think back to your old methods, over-explaining, over-apologizing, overcompensating. You used to hand people the playbook of how to hurt you. Now you burn the playbook. You write a new one in ink, so quiet only you can read it. A stoic truth to hold tonight. Seneca once wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." He wasn't talking about airports, he was talking about your mind. When your energy scatters, your influence fades. But when your focus sharpens, the world reshapes around it. And right now your focus is still. Sharp, centered. Tip 37. Be unhurried in your movements, but intentional in your results. You send that one final text. Not a revenge message, not a dramatic goodbye, just a clear line. That's not a space I choose to re-enter. Simple, unemotional, and done. They'll read it, maybe scoff, maybe screenshot, maybe sit in stunned silence. Doesn't matter, because manipulation isn't always about controlling others, it's about controlling your response to their need to control you. Historians still argue whether Stoicism was inherently political. Some say it was a private philosophy for personal peace. Others claim it was a subtle rebellion against tyranny. But tonight you know the truth, it can be both. Power in silence, control in calm. You close your phone, flip your journal shut, stand. Even your posture now sends a message. I'm not participating in your chaos. I'm cultivating my own peace. Tip 38. Walk away while they're still talking, and they will keep talking. That's fine. Let them narrate your transformation from the outside. Let them wonder what spell you've cast. Let them gossip, guess, grasp. You've become the ghost in their strategy, the glitch in their plan, the proof that you can't manipulate someone who no longer needs anything from you. Tonight, as you brush your teeth, as you fold your blanket just right, as you turn out the light, you feel it settle into your bones, that strange and subtle satisfaction that you no longer flinch where you once unraveled. You're not looking for the upper hand. You've found the higher ground. And that scares them more. Because when they said, "You'll regret walking away," what they really feared was this moment, the moment you didn't. You lie in bed, not buzzing, not plotting, just breathing. You are the calm after the storm that never came. And here's your final thought: manipulation, when mastered through Stoic wisdom, isn't about domination. It's about detachment. You stop needing others to act right. You start making peace with what you control, your own conduct. Tip 39. True power doesn't shout. It whispers, then watches. You smile, maybe even smirk. And as your eyelids start to sink, you hear your old self whisper one last time, "Are we really okay?" And you answer without hesitation, "Better than ever." Now slow your breath. Let everything soften: your jaw, your hands, your chest. You don't need to think about tomorrow. Not yet. Not while the quiet wraps around you like warm fabric. Tonight you did something hard you let go without fanfare. You chose composure over chaos. And whether anyone saw it or not, it counts. Let that thought hum gently in your chest. It counts. The people who tried to rattle you, they don't own the rights to your story anymore. You reclaimed the pen. And you didn't need to shout to do it. You whispered. You paused. You waited. You moved when it made sense and stayed still when it didn't. That kind of discipline. It builds slowly, like moonlight spreading across stone. Almost invisible at first, but eventually undeniable. So if the room feels especially still right now, good. That's the shape of peace. And if part of you wants to reach out, explain yourself one last time, get the last word, breathe instead. You've already said more with your silence than 1,000 clever texts ever could. Tomorrow may ask for strength again, but for now, let your softness be your strength. Let your stillness be your protection. And as sleep comes for you, know this: the most terrifying thing you've ever done isn't walking away, it's refusing to come back. Sleep easy.